Any views or opinions expressed in this podcast are strictly the views or opinions of the presenter. Nothing in here is the view of the firms, corporations, financial entities that anybody represents. Nothing expressed here is a view of any regulator or semi-regulatory agency. All content is intended to be educational. Nothing in this episode construes specific investment advice, and if you do require advice, you should seek an appropriate advisor, be that a financial planner or a tax advisor or possibly a lawyer. Hey, it's Jason Watt here. Welcome back to the CE Drive podcast. In this episode, I'm going to be talking with Matt Lister and Alex Mulders from CloudAdvisors. This is another group benefits focused session, therefore Alberta Accident and Sickness Credit, however, not a CGIB Navigator episode. So you'll be able to get life insurance credits in all jurisdictions except Alberta. No life insurance credits here, but one accident and sickness credit. It'd be good for a financial planning credit from FP Canada, professional development credit from IROC, and an insurance credit from MFDA. And we're about an hour of content here, so I'll roll right to the object. The object is this orange backpack. I'm super proud of this backpack because it's tiny, and I did an entire 3 days of travel out of that backpack recently. So there you go. Let's roll into the interview. I'm here today with Alex Mulders and Matt Lister from CloudAdvisors. They're going to talk in a moment here about what CloudAdvisors is. And we have a special guest here too, my granddaughter Freya, who's home with us sick today. So Matt, do you mind starting off with a quick intro as to who you are? And we'll talk about CloudAdvisors in a moment.
Yeah, certainly, Jason. Thanks for having us. So my name is Matt Lister. I'm the CEO and co-founder of CloudAdvisors. We're Canada's employee benefits marketplace, and I'll talk a little bit more about what all that means. Been in the industry for about 10 years. Started as an employee benefits advisor in BC, working with small and medium-sized companies, and then transitioning full-time into the software and technology we're in today.
Okay, perfect. And Alex?
Hi.
Catch you with your coffee in hand there. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. Thanks for having us today. I'm Alex Mulders. I joined CloudAdvisors about a year ago, and really helping us kind of take off with the employer side of the business. Fresh graduate, but stepped right into this kind of new tech role, and here today and really excited. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. And I think, Matt, you're going to give us a little rundown on what CloudAdvisors is and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So CloudAdvisors, as you heard me just say, Canada's employee benefits marketplace. But what that really means is not only do we have hundreds of available products and services that are available to Canadian employers through group advisors, but what we offer is a complete automated plan evaluation, something that we call Smart Quote. And really what it is an opportunity for any employer to get a free evaluation of how their plan stacks up, looking at how competitive it is, maybe in their industry, in their province, or their group size, but then connecting them with insights on how they can improve their plan, addressing things like gaps and risks, but as well as opportunities in the marketplace. And big part of that is obviously matching them to available solutions that they can consider, making sure that they've got quotes and data to support that, and ultimately everything that they need to put in the best plan for their people.
And you said you started off as an advisor yourself, Matt. So this is the sort of classic story. You started out this way. I assume you went looking for some, I'm going to say benchmarking here. You found the market a little bit lacking. Like there used to be the Toronto, Board of Trade benchmarking report, which was reasonable, but there's not really much. I mean, some of the providers have proprietary stuff. Is that kind of what happened here, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, you're pretty close to the origin story, if you want to call it that. First couple of years in the industry, really just once you get licensed, start to build your network. I was pursuing my CEBS at the time and completed that early in my career, and it was really around understanding like what would the future of the industry look like for me at the time. I was in my late 20s, starting out into the industry and realizing I got a pretty long runway. although ironically, I'm not an advisor anymore. And what would it look like to be an advisor in 10 years? What would the types of tools that we'd be using, and how could I sort of look for those things today? And obviously, as you kind of alluded to, no one was really building anything specific for the group benefit space, and it's a fairly niche industry. And so, we thought about, what are the problems? How can we maybe perhaps build some of those things ourselves? And in talking with advisors that I was meeting in the first year or two of the business, this concept of benchmarking came up. Benchmarking is something that's been used by some of the largest consultants, and there are some proprietary tools out there, but it wasn't something that was readily like on demand or available to the typical advisor or broker when they needed it. So that was our original offering, was how do we get benchmarking in the hands of advisors and employers when they need it.
Perfect. And I think there's maybe two different answers to this question, but can you talk us through who your ideal client would be? So, Matt, do you want to start us off here?
Yeah, I mean, it's a three-sided marketplace, right? So we're working with all elements of the supply chain. So we've got obviously our provider partners that are contributing, products and services and rates and quotes and everything into the marketplace itself. And then all of our services delivered 100% through our advisor partners. So large or small, we license our technology through an advisor, either a local regional advisory firm that specializes in benefits, or a large consolidator or national advisory firm that then delivers the technology to employers. And that's what you heard Alex talk about at the beginning as a real focus for us in the last year, try and get our messaging out in front of employers. So the ideal client, obviously, from the provider side, is pretty simple. If you offer an eligible group solution, we want you in the marketplace. From the advisor side of things, the ideal client is really someone who specializes in group benefits, and that's something that I'm really passionate about. And I think you mentioned as well, like there's 90,000 plus licensed advisors, but there's a much smaller set that actually specializes in group, and I think that's very, very important. So we focus on the group specialists, and then on the employer side of things, we work with through our advisor partners, employers large and small. They all have different needs at different times, depending on the industry, province, and size that they are. But one pattern that we've identified is those that are keenly involved in either high turnover or are actively recruiting and trying to retain talent. That obviously puts pressure on the benefits plan, puts pressure on how competitive it is, and raises a lot of interest for our service.
So, Alex, if you want to field this question or not, maybe Matt, whomever, but in the sense of that employer then, so you've got the employer who, I assume they would have some pain around their benefits, and this would send them to Google. Is that kind of what happens here, or is there something else?
There is a volume of employers that would reach out to Google. Oftentimes we hear they reach out to peers. They're talking to other HR professionals. They're working with HR consultants or recruiters, or other benefits professionals they've worked with in the past. Obviously, we'd hope, and our advisor customers would hope, they'd reach out to them when they've got those problems or those concerns. Year after year, Benefits Canada does the survey. They identify what are the main drivers behind employee benefits, and there's a lot of things that we can talk about, priorities in having a benefits plan, but the number one thing that keeps coming back is to be competitive. And the reality is that a lot of employers simply don't know how their plan stacks up. And so that's why benchmarking has become such an important place to start.
Sorry, Alex, anything to throw in there?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, quickly as well. I think, a lot of small-time employers as well are, quite interested in benefits. Obviously, the market has become incredibly competitive to retain, top talent in this country, and so a lot of employers are looking to even just include a benefits plan for the first time. But to Matt's point, a lot of our original clients or employers are coming through, word of mouth or consultants, but it's mostly a very kind of tight knit industry. So a lot of it's not necessarily coming through Google. We'd love it to, but we'd love to grow kind of our brand awareness a little bit there and have people search us up. But a lot of it is through word of mouth, and people are hearing what we're doing and really valuing the what we can offer them. Yeah.
So do you find like, are benefits advisors sending their clients to use your service directly, or is it more like kind of once the advisor has that client, they take care of everything?
Yeah, so through our advisor partners from day one, we've sort of built the database by offering the service through their clients and prospects. So we would engage a particular advisory firm. They may look after, say, 150 clients, and through the course of that first year with us, or maybe right out of the gates, they're onboarding and analyzing each one of their clients throughout their renewal cycles. And then ad hoc, as they're prospecting new business and they get opportunities to advise other employers, they're adding that into the mix as well. So predominantly we've grown through our advisor partners, but one of the things that we've seen in the last year with our brand presence and our website and our digital marketing efforts and all the work that Alex and her team are doing is we've seen employers coming directly to CloudAdvisors. And so we now have the opportunity through our website to actually connect those employers with that free evaluation and an advisor partner at the same time. So that's a real seamless process that happens where an employer who's interested in getting that benchmarking, they can sign up through our site. They can either invite their existing advisor, get connected with one of the advisors in our platform, and get that evaluation all electronically. And that's one of the things that they love. So we're now kind of playing both sides of that relationship.
So can we talk a little bit about maybe some more of the specifics of benchmarking here? And we can talk about group or just in general. So first off, and I know, Alex, you talked about sort of attract and retain that top talent. Would you see there being additional benefits for the plan sponsor of having some benchmarking done?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mentioned, I think what we see is the number one reason why employers have benefits in the first place, and certainly why they maintain them outside of a collective bargaining agreement, is to be competitive, right? And one of the other patterns that we've identified is, and others have identified as well, is that the majority of plans, especially in the small and medium-sized business sector that represents the majority of employers, are many years outdated. So it's very common to put a plan in place that met the budget needs at the time and continue to renew it year on year, but not realizing that it wasn't keeping up with the times. Changes weren't being proactively made, and sort of what you end up with is some stagnant or outdated coverage, right? And employers just didn't have maybe the budget to engage a consultant on thousands of dollars to get a robust benchmarking of their plan done. Wasn't feasible, so they simply kind of just moved forward as is. And so the benefits for the plan sponsor is if they're relying on that plan to perform certain objectives, like be a competitive offering when they're hiring new employees, to be a competitive offering when employees are looking to see if the grass is greener on the other side, to look to how their employer is taking care of them, taking care of their families and things that they rely on, that they just simply didn't have the context. And so, I think a single starting place is context, to show that employer, like, what is the current state of the benefits plan? 80% of employers have a benefits plan to begin with, but how up to date is it? Where do we sit? And then where do we need to position it in the marketplace?
So in that sense, that's a good answer. And if I'm thinking, Matt, about benchmarking here, am I benchmarking against 1,000 employers, kind of my size in my geographic region, or can I be a little more granular? Can I see, employers that have implemented a benefits plan or changed their benefits plan in the last year or two? Like how specific can I get with that?
Yeah, and I know you want to get into the nuts and bolts of benchmarking, so I'll give you a longer answer here, because I think your audience might appreciate, because we see benchmarking at different stages, as you alluded to. So, and Alex mentioned, obviously, there's some portion of employers that don't have a benefits plan. So benchmarking for them is like understanding, what is a typical plan, and actually starting to quantify a standard plan or traditional benefits. Like, what does that actually look like? In terms of what is meaningful for the comparison, that's going to differ by employer to employer, right? So certainly some, are very sensitive to their industry. Others much more sensitive to the province, especially benchmarking within the province of Quebec, or benchmarking Western Canada versus Atlantic Canada, we see some stark differences. Pharmacare provinces versus non-pharmacare. Group size is an interesting one because every employer seems to look at it a little bit differently. And what we see commonly is, well, let's do a national benchmark. Okay, that's not quite relevant. Let's do a provincial benchmark. But now with post-COVID era and hybrid work opportunities, the geography is all fragmented. So you could have employees in any province or other parts of the world. So maybe geography isn't the most important thing, and so maybe group size. What I try and tell our advisor partners and what we see from employers is look to where you're hiring from and where your people might be exiting to, because that's going to give you an indication of where you need to be competitive. Maybe you're a large employer that's hiring from a number of small businesses in your area. Maybe it's the inverse and you offer other things, right? So, the industry, region, and group size combination that's right for you is really going to be specific to each employer and who they need to compete against, at what level they are willing to or can afford to compete, and then making sure that they're competitive with where employers or their employees might be looking to leave to, and saying, oh no, we offer that too. We offer that too. We know that the guys across the street offer that, but we have that as well, right?
I like the context answer here, Matt. I think that's a great way to look at it. So just keeping down this context path, and I don't know if this is a software question or a philosophical question. Your answer will help me out here, but I might have so plan A, or the plan I currently have in place. I've got a really solid health and dental offering, but the employees pay half the cost. And then sort of plan B is a more mediocre health and dental offering, but the employees don't pay any of the cost. So how does that kind of thing show up in benchmarking? Does the question make sense?
Yeah, and actually what you're touching on, I've got a more recent way that we answer that question, but it really reminds me of day one, because that was one of the first problems we identified when we started this benchmarking journey is, how do you build a database that incorporates 99.9% of the plan designs that are out there and the variations that you just alluded to? One of the things that's unique about Canada is, compared to some of the other countries that we've looked at for benchmarking, is you can customize your plan right down to 3 employees. So what that creates is there is very few true apples to apples comparisons. You've got a little bit of variation or a lot of variation in virtually every plan, provider to provider, at the time it was set up, what advisors set it up, what strategies they employed. So when we built the database, it had to incorporate all of these different aspects of multiple providers that could be in the picture, multiple divisions of coverage, multiple classes of coverage, and then on top of that, who's paying the premium. And I heard you mention that comparison is there's different ways to offer what might be perceived as the same thing, but at the end of the day, it's one thing to offer benefits, it's another thing to pay for benefits. So the foundation of what we do is we've got multiple reports. Our comprehensive report's 14 pages. It's 200 variables of a plan design, and we independently report on each one. So what that does is it gives the advisor or the consultant the ammunition that they need for just about any question that could come up from the employer. But what we're doing today is we're summarizing all those reports into what we call our BAR score. And the BAR score stands for benefits, attraction, retention, and it's like a credit score, but for benefits. And by summarizing all of this available benchmark, you include this, you don't include this, you're high here, you're low there, this isn't applicable to you. And then on top of that, we layer in premium splitting. We layer in weighting for what percentage of the benefit you're paying versus having the employee pay, because it's the confluence of all these variables that ultimately answers the question, how does your plan stack up?
BAR score is interesting to me. So I see some super analytical questions from it's very common. You got a bunch of group benefits advisors who look at their renewals and they say, insurer sent me a 12.8% renewal, but my math says it should only be 11.3%. I'm sure you hear this kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So you find that I'm going to say appropriately analytical, I don't want to, that advisor, do you find that they look at that BAR score and they're like, Matt, what's going on? that kind of thing? Is this a back and forth with some of your advisor clients?
Yeah, and you know what? We've benefited from that. Yeah, certainly some more than others are, hey, can you open up the hood and show me how this thing works? And what we've done is, especially our long-standing advisor partners, is we've worked with them through the early versions of that. And the early versions didn't have premium splitting considerations, and the early versions had different weighting for different benefits. And we've continued to evolve that bar score based on the feedback from consultants that are working with employers that are in the thousands of employees, to consultants that are working in the union environment or working with small mom and pop shops. Like, the bar score has to be able, if it's going to be this truly universal ranking system, it has to be able to look at what are the best employers or the largest employers in the country doing, and how do they differentiate between the 98th and the 99th percentile, but also how does a standalone HSA differentiate from a really basic traditional benefits plan compared to something that's a little bit more robust. And so we've had to make different fine-tuning adjustments along the way and bring in more and more data to try and nuance it more and more, and add in new considerations. But ultimately, this whole industry really exists to serve the employer and the employees. So our true litmus test is when the advisor takes it to an employer and has an amazing conversation with them. The eyes light up. Whoa, I thought we had a better plan than this. What's going on? I thought we had a pretty basic plan. This is showing that it's a pretty weak plan. Or, I thought we'd be, we needed to be up here and it's down there. And those are the moments where it's like, oh, the bar score is doing its job, because it's created the urgency now for that advisor to engage the employer in how they can improve their plan. Right. And it leads into the rest of the evaluation.
So something that I know shows up a lot for individual advisors, but I think has some relevance for group benefits advisors, is this idea that, a group, a client, somebody who's paying premiums knows that they would be better off if they did step X, Y, and Z. But then what actually, does this actually kick them in the butt? Does it get them to take action where they maybe otherwise wouldn't?
Yeah, that's absolutely what we're seeing. Competition is the number one driver, but the competition is also what creates that urgency to take action. Because the reason you have a plan that's 10 years outdated is not necessarily because the advisor didn't provide any recommendations or suggestions, but they weren't taken up, right? And it was sort of pushed off to next year. And so when you find out that that bar score creates the urgency to all of a sudden say, oh, I see what XYZ and other employers are doing. I've missed the boat on this. We need to take up and make that change, right? And so we've even seen situations where the bar score has been used to communicate to employees on both sides of the equation. So employers that are doing a good job, have been very proactive with their advisor, with their providers, and have a really strong plan, saying, hey, look, see, we have a very strong plan. I told you so. Not quite in that exact way, but we have heard stories of the bar score being presented in lunchrooms and saying, our benefit plan ranks this, and we're looking at ways to improve it all the time. And it shows the employees that they're aware, they're paying attention, and they are seeking ways to improve the plan. And conversely, if they've got a negative score, they might maybe want to address that behind closed doors before they get out there and talk about how they're positioned, right? So it starts with awareness, because if you don't know how you sit, you don't know whether or not you need to make a change. And then the system will show you, what are some of the insights and ideas on how to actually improve the score. And that's when it gets tactical then with the advisor on, okay, what are we going to do with this newfound awareness?
Another one of these areas, Matt, where you get some comparison between plans where the apples to oranges thing shows up, I think, is different classes of employees. So, or, management class and staff, or whatever the case is. So how do you manage that kind of comparison?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I was, so we were thinking about that when we were creating the original database and the hierarchy of what does a benefit plan actually look like? Because, you've got all these different plan design variations that are available from different providers. You have multiple providers. You have multiple divisions where you maybe have different class for, or pardon me, a different level of benefits for one province or one business unit or what have you. And then you've got this class structure of benefits. And it's very, very common, even below the level of a flex plan, to have a different level of benefits for executives, or certainly for retirees or full-time or part-time. So we developed a class type system to be able to intake all these and understand these different levels of benefits. And now we see benefit plan designs with hundreds of divisions and class type, and a huge amount of variation. But even on those small plans where you've got a regular employee class and you got an executive level benefits, what we do is we record those essentially as two plans belong to the same group. And so when we report on that, it allows us the ability to report as one group, summarizing all of the various classes that they have, or actually isolate and pick independent classes. And that in Intel is used in the bar score as well, because it's not necessarily appropriate to weight the executive class benefits and say, well, this is what this group has overall for benefits. It's kind of like, what is Amazon doing for their warehouse versus what is Amazon doing for their leadership? Like, these are not going to be the same thing. So it's very important that you either exclude or weight them differently. But when it comes to a benchmarking report, our advisor partners can select any combination. So they can look at just a certain set of what we call benefit summaries, a unique provider, division, and class combination.
Perfect. So I have maybe one last benchmarking question, although I'm sure I missed something here. So I assume this is like a two-way street with data, right? You're sort of feeding data in from your clients and then getting, that shows up in the benchmark then. And of course, this is such a big deal today, right? Is how do people manage that data when it comes from clients? Like, they want to get into like a Facebook type of situation, right? So,
right.
So how do you think about that trade-off between needing that data and being responsible with it?
Yeah, it's great. Another good question. And again, I kind of go back to day one, like first principles of starting the company. We started slow and we built slow to do things right. We really focused on, with our engineers, that security and scalability would come first and second, and then performance third. So while everyone was excited to rush out and just start ripping off benchmarking reports, like really, really well structure the database and the process to protect that confidential client information. So when we started, obviously you can't benchmark against nothing. So we had a few initial advisory firms that submitted a few hundred groups, and we kind of got things going. And then as we licensed the software to more and more advisory firms, we build that block of business, and we go back to those advisory firms on the year two when they're doing the renewal, and see if there was any changes, and either add, update, or remove them from the database. And so the data was sort of snowballed from there. Every client that came into the system is anonymized and in aggregate forms that benchmarking service. We didn't, however, use prospect data, which is a question we get sometimes. Just because the nature of a prospect coming across is would have a pretty high probability that their plan design would change. And that advisor may or may not win the business, so they may or may not have the relationship to be able to say, yeah, they stayed with that plan, or no, they moved to this plan. So while we've got about 15,000 in client data points that we use in the database today, we've looked at upwards of 100,000 groups over the last 7 years, sometimes multiple years, year on year. So the database is really a living and breathing, live, ongoing survey, if you will. And it's been really important. We've never compelled any of our advisors to submit 100% of their data, but rather rely on the value proposition of benchmarking and the evaluation and now the marketplace to be able to compel them to want to submit more and help us grow. And through the addition of some very large customers, we grew quite quickly, and we were able to to offer this benchmarking in some really niche areas now. We saw our average group size, just because I know everyone loves some numbers. We saw our average group size grow from about 35, 45 employees in the first few years to over 100 employees on average, as we started to work with employers that are over 1,000 employees, in very specific industries, filling out multiple provinces. So, more and more, there's less and less benchmarks that we can't do, right? But in the beginning, when they'd ask you for a very, very niche benchmark, maybe it was a pretty small comparison, and now it's a pretty robust comparison.
What else should I know about benchmarking here? It's a fascinating topic, and it's not like you're I think unique in the Canadian marketplace with what you're doing. So what else should I ask here?
Yeah, benchmarking is a really interesting topic. I've always been of the mindset that we shouldn't strive for it to be a very academic exercise, although it can be. You can involve the statisticians and really get into a number of ways to present the data and how do you manage different aspects of the data integrity. We've always tried to increase the quality and the accuracy, the consistency, the completeness of the data to make sure that we're offering the best possible service, but we tried to present it in an actionable way. So what I've seen in the past is a lot of benchmarking surveys or other things that are presented in maybe not quite an academic way, but like an industry insight way, like, hey, here's what's going on in the industry, and isn't that interesting, and maybe we can draw some conclusions from this. What we tried to do was make the benchmarking, and I believe we've succeeded with this, is making the benchmarking like on demand, so instantly available during a meeting, before, during, and after a meeting, but actionable, highly actionable. Because ultimately what benchmarking is we talked about context, but it's answering questions, right? And when you think about like a typical employer plan sponsor that doesn't really understand what current plan they have, what's available in the marketplace, what are other employers doing, what should I be doing? These are all just questions that benchmarking can help answer. And arming the advisor with those answers really just elevates their ability to advise those clients, right? And move from this world of, hey, trust me, I'm the advisor, to trust me and let me prove it to you with the data.
So, that's a good answer. And it sounds also like you talked about that focus. It sounds like this is very focused on like the plan sponsor being able to understand something useful out of it.
Yeah, and that's actually where the bar score came from. I remember I was on a run, and I was thinking about sort of the business, and this idea of like simplicity kept ringing in my ears. Like, we have to make insurance simple. We have to simplify things. Okay, right now you offer a 14-page comprehensive benchmarking report. Advisors love it, but it's a beast, right? Especially for an employer to digest. So the idea of the bar score was, well, what could be simpler than one benchmark? So that becomes our starting benchmark, the bar score. That's your gateway into maybe wanting more benchmarks and more evaluation and to engage that advisor, and to always kind of figure out how we can position the data in such a way that someone who doesn't understand benefits, doesn't understand insurance lingo, can pick it up and go, oh, we're here and we need to go there. And then ask the next question, what would that cost, or how do we do that? And like a tactical example for you is in our benchmarking reports, we almost never show the average coverage, because average coverage is a blend of what other employers are offering, and it's rarely like the actual number that the insurer offers, right? So what we try and do is we try and show this quartile ranking. And this was actually the inspiration in the logo. Our logo is a bell curve. It's like, well, where do you sit in that curve? Are you somewhere in the middle, or are you somewhere out on the extremes? And we show the 25th, the 50th, and the 75th to really give that the middle 50%. This is what employers are doing. Because if you want to be on the extremes, like what is the bare minimum? You don't need benchmarking. If you want to be on the extremes, I'd like to offer 100% unlimited of everything. Great. Your budget is your constraint, right? We really want to focus on, okay, what is that middle range offering, presenting the data, and again, in a way that it can be actionable.
So yeah, that's great. Now, can we switch gears here and talk about the marketplace a little bit?
Absolutely.
So first off, I'm curious here. What do you see as surprising uptakes in the marketplace? What gets bought there that you never thought would show up?
Yeah, so like unsurprisingly, obviously we see like it's a lot of the add-on items, but surprisingly, the more non-traditional items is where we see a lot of the traction. And I think it's because, advisors largely know, especially with their preferred vendors, like what the product shelf is for a particular insurance carrier, and like and they're using the evaluation to guide them on plan alternates and such. But it's the whole world of everything else that they could or should be talking about that they're constantly surprised that employers are actually interested in. Because I think when you're within industry, it's very easy to kind of dismiss, oh, you should be talking about this new fringe benefit or this other area here. But employers don't see those lines, right? Like employers just see like, this is our employee benefits package. How much of that comes from a life insurance company? Don't know, don't care. What I'm interested in is like, what is the package? What does it cost? And what benefit is it providing to my people, right? And obviously, how competitive it is. So it's those non-traditional items that we see popping up. And that was actually like, so to give you some examples, we see niche areas of wellness being considered in terms of addiction or substance abuse, or youth therapy, or pet insurance, or veterinarian services, or cybersecurity, and cross-sell into different commercial insurance items. And obviously the whole world of virtual telemedicine opportunities for not just mental health, but physiotherapy and ergonomic assessments and nutrition and holistic wellness. And it's like, this was also kind of like the driving force of the marketplace itself. It's like every week there was a new vendor, and it was, how on earth as an advisor are you supposed to keep track of all of these new offerings? You can't. It's very difficult to educate yourself on all of them. But even just the access point of, I got to know someone to email someone to get a brochure. So what we wanted to do was provide a home, not just for all of these vendors to promote what they're offering, but a home for advisors and employers to be able to go in and easily find, and now have the evaluation actually match them to eligible solutions.
I have to ask about pet insurance here. I knew this was going to come up, Matt, in the marketplace. I'm going to say I have this bias. Pet insurance is like, I don't know if you look at the loss ratios on pet insurance, it's a terrible deal. But I don't want to sound critical of it, although I think I just did. But I get that it's a product, like people have a strong emotional attachment to this product. I think this is kind of what happens here. And I can really see an employer picking up something like that and going to their employees, and this like trumps whatever you're doing for disability insurance or for like AD&D or what, you know what I mean? Like, do you see some of that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you that it trumps it from like an employee appreciation perspective.
That's what I
but like, I know with a lot of advisors on the call, like I think it's important, like paramount, to call out, like you have to have the house in order to start talking about pet insurance. Like there's fundamental things in terms of like the disability benefits and maybe the retirement plan and things of that nature, that it's like, that's table stakes. So we've got that in place. Now what else are we going to do? And pet insurance is a great example of where competition is driving the urgency, I believe. You hear about such and such employer adding it in, and the appreciation from the employees, and then employees at another company going, hey, that's cool. Like, why don't we have that? Have we ever considered that? And employers don't want to be caught flat-footed. No, we've never heard of that, or we haven't priced it out, or it's like they want to be showing that they're consciously making decisions. And some of the statistics we've seen in of late is, I think it's over 50% of Canadian households have at least one pet. And so it's like, it's not like this niche thing anymore. Like and most people would consider their pet a member of the family. So if you look at like, what are the like foundational principles of a benefits plan? Well, it's designed to, provide access and protection and safety and security and all these things to the employee and their family. Okay, well, the family member includes a pet. And if the pet gets sick, I've got emotional distress, I've got time away from work, I've got high vet bills potentially to cover, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we've just made a case for pet insurance. Didn't think we'd be talking about that when I started in the industry, but it came up just last week. Tech company joining the platform, very first thing out of their mouth was, oh, pet insurance. Yeah, a few of our people asked about that. Okay.
And lest anybody think I dislike people's animal, we had, when I was at BCC, like prior to us being acquired, we had almost everybody working there had a dog. I don't. but we had the dogs in the office. Like every day, a different person would bring their dog to work. And once we figured out what dogs got along with each other, then we even had more than one dog in the office sometimes. So,
well, I've got one at my feet right now, and if you look back a little ways, I guess, in our social media, he's our chief happiness officer, and a few of our pets, team members' pets, have been featured, and it's a lot of fun, but it's a real emotional attachment for people, and it's a real potential source for financial hardship and distraction from the workplace, right? So if that pet is sick, so all of a sudden that becomes something that's important. And from the advisor's perspective, like when you're talking about looking after 150 clients, let's say, you don't necessarily have time to promote and sell pet insurance to all of them. And that's where I think the technology comes into play. Like, we need to leverage technology to efficiently distribute these ideas to our clients and allow clients to, discover these things on their own, get information from you. You can't rely on your face-to-face in-person meetings to talk about a laundry list of things that are available in the marketplace, right? And so that's where we see the connection between these niche solutions and the technology.
Thanks for bringing me back to the marketplace there, Matt. That's good. I like your okay. So then what about on the marketplace front again here? So I like this framing where you say, like, I should be dealing with the fundamentals, getting everything right. I don't have time for every kind of how do you build the marketplace? You have hundreds of offerings in there. Is it they come to you, you go to them? Is advisors ask you about it? What's the source of all the offerings you have on there?
Yeah, I mean, that's been an evolution in itself. I mean, again, like, you don't start benchmarking with one group, or like, I guess you have to start with one group, but you don't achieve benchmarking with one group, and you don't achieve a marketplace with one product or service, right? So to answer your question directly, like now, it's almost exclusively advisor recommendations. So, we have advisors say, hey, I came across this solution, I really like it, I'd like it added to the marketplace. The advantage to the advisor is all the sales collateral, the brochures, the videos, the descriptions, all of it's in one place for them, so easy access. But then we work with those provider partners to get their rate tables in behind the scenes, automate the quoting, automate the proposal. So it's like, I like this, I want to promote this to my clients. Through our Smart Quote offering, we can literally one click and personalize a proposal to 100% of their block of business. So if you imagine, like, somebody in the past, like, manually, like, typing out proposals for 150 clients, like, that's a burden. And the reality is it didn't get done because of it. It was a burden, and maybe it wasn't that profitable, so it just didn't happen. So then that vendor misses out, those employees miss out, and now we represent a way for sort of mass personalized distribution of some of these solutions. But going back to the beginning, when we didn't have some of that functionality, and we certainly didn't have the volume of solutions that we do today, it was just, I've heard it said about other businesses, you have to do the things that don't scale to scale. And so, yours truly put together a list of hundreds of, products and services, and built out solution pages with available scraping of web content and everything we could, and we just put it in front of the vendors, and then actually that brochure is outdated, we need to update that, or actually, you've got our old logo, this is our new one, and you only have one of our solutions, we actually have 5 of our solutions. And so as we started to connect with the teams, and they saw that we had one side of the market in terms of we have over 1,000 advisors, utilizing and have access to this service, they go, oh, so this is really efficient for us because we don't need to update every single person in our distribution channel. We can update CloudAdvisors, and then that collateral goes to everyone instantly. So again, it kind of snowballed from there.
What does your back and forth look like? You talked a little bit about like information sharing or a simple repository here. What does your back and forth look like with insurers and other product providers there? Is this is it all essentially automated? Are you having manual updates? Is it a lot of email back and forth? What's the
Yeah, it's an area of evolution that I thought would have gone faster than it has, but we're still optimistic about the future. It's a pretty honest answer. I think when we started kind of naively thinking that we would be able to plug into all these various insurers and solutions, and the reality is that everyone's been on their own path of digitalization of their own systems and processes. So we have built some APIs. We have built connections and loaders from different carriers and different source material where we can. But we've also relied on different technologies, team, and process to just get data in the system. Our philosophy has been to do whatever we can to reduce the technical burden of our customer. So if you're an advisor that goes like, I don't have a CRM, I don't know where all my data is. Well, do you have the PDF booklet for this one client? Great, drag and drop, start there. And we would literally take data in whatever format it was available. And then behind the scenes, we've sourced solutions now for nearly all of those situations. So you could send us a photocopy of a PDF on an angle, and we'll be able to get started with it. We don't prefer that. let's not let that be the message. You know, we obviously love carriers that can package things in standard formats, or advisors that can package things in standard formats and send that across. But you know, like, we're willing to work with whatever to deliver the service and bridge that gap, as I think the group insurance industry, or maybe the insurance industry as a whole, you know, evolves to that next stage.
Can we switch gears and talk a little bit about technology challenges? You haven't just talked about some of them. What do you have to adhere to in terms of a privacy standard or other like SOC 2 or compliance standards like this? Is there?
Yeah, so we don't deal in like confidential medical information. We don't deal in personally identifiable information, and that makes it a lot easier for us. We've been really strict to, you know, make sure that we can't even intake, you know, certain personally identifiable information. Like if we uptake employee member data sheet, like a census showing what members are in a program in order to quote or do some sort of analysis, we can't even intake names or dates of birth or other things that would be like even more identifiable. So we take steps to reduce, first of all, the amount of sensitive data that we could have and otherwise don't need. And then, of course, we, like any software company, we follow all the strictest standards and try and, you know, exceed those standards where we can, in terms of, you know, maintaining data sovereignty, housing the data in Canada, using leading cloud service providers, encrypting the data. But a big area of work for us in this area, which I never thought of at the beginning, is helping our advisor partners gain that express permission from their clients. You know, in terms of like really helping our advisor partners clarify, like, what is the service that they're going to be delivering to their employers, and making sure that the employers understand that that's a give and take as well, right? Like, you're going to give this data to your advisor, not just because they have an agent of record on your business, but because they're going to use it for the service of this evaluation, right? And what does that mean? So what we're seeing too is, in combination with us, you know, maturing our service, we're seeing advisors maturing their client agreements or their permissions that they need to procure. And, you know, I love all that work because it's emphasizing the advisor value proposition, which is the world I come from. And I think the right way of doing things, if I can call it that, is, you know, you should be selling and advising based on this differentiated value proposition and showing that you're more professional, you've got standards in terms of how you handle confidential client information, and you've partnered with third parties that respect the information the same way. All go hand in hand in terms of those advisors being more successful.
Now, I assume that some of your marketplace providers are not in Canada. Do you run into international barriers this way? Does it not bother you?
Yeah, that's one of the very first filters, you know, we look at. Like, obviously, like, do you offer a group solution or an individual solution? Do you offer it to Canadian employers? And so there's a number of vendors that are US-based vendors that do now have Canadian solutions, and we house a number of those in the marketplace. But that's part of the value prop. Like, you know, if you go to Google and you're typing in group solutions, like, who knows if you're finding stuff that, you know, is only available in the UK, or it's only available in the US, or it's only available in these states. When you search CloudAdvisors Marketplace, you can be assured that everything you're seeing is available in Canada.
And anything that you found that I know you have a benefits background. You're not a technologist originally. Is there anything you found as a challenge that you think is unique to the Canadian insurance sector that maybe other tech entrepreneurs might not run into?
In terms of other tech entrepreneurs, yeah, I mean, we're a smaller market. I think that's one thing that I've realized. You know, I always thought of Canada as a big country, and it is big geographically, but not necessarily by population. And so, you know, when you compare to, you know, what others are doing in the United States, for example, you're going to find that we are, you know, a smaller market, a more, you know, perhaps a more conservative market. We might move a little slower in some areas. So, you know, you need to be mindful of that. We have a huge geographical distribution, though, and I think that's actually one of the advantages for technology in Canada, because you have certain things like, you know, longer driving times between clients in rural areas, and, you know, the opportunity for utilizing cloud computing, utilizing digital virtual meeting solutions can help you become more profitable working with those smaller employers. And I think it actually necessitates like getting these services out and to smaller employers. So the geography is actually a benefit there. Specifically in the industry, I already talked about, like, down to 3 employees, you know, you can have a fully personalized plan design, it seems, and that's not a standard everywhere else. So that variation obviously supports benchmarking. With everyone having a slightly different plan design, you want to know how your plan stacks up.
Yeah. What about Quebec and or French?
Yes, so we did go through the process of making sure that all of our reporting was available in both French and English. You know, and increasingly making sure that when we do launch things, that we launch them in both official languages, and we don't sort of treat the French speaking audience like, you know, a second consideration, but provisioning for that in every project and everything that we're doing. And you know, that's been an interesting lesson as well. Quebec obviously has a number of their own rules and conditions and things of that nature, but we've also utilized different aspects of translation to really try and nuance the language appropriately for that audience. It's not there's some dispute actually in between French language speaking advisors and insurance carriers on, you know, different terminology, and, you know, maybe not too dissimilar to the rest of the insurance industry, where there's dispute on what is a synonym of this or that, or what is the different acronym to be used there. So again, just trying to really enhance the language that we offer there, so that it's immediately interpretable by that end employer. So, yeah.
Now, do you have? I don't know if there's any validity to this question, but I'm going to ask it. Like, is there any kind of issue where you're presenting something that an employer can come and, I don't know, at least shop for, right? I understand you do filter everything through insurance or intermediaries ultimately. That's accurate, right?
Yeah.
But do you have any tension around, like, between advisors who say, well, you know, it's awkward, Matt, when employers come straight to your website and look at something, or is there anything there in terms of attention?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you'd be asking the question if there wasn't. There absolutely is a tension. I think there's a tension whenever you're doing something new, and you're sort of challenging the status quo. You know, we are helping to evolve the future of advising, and we are helping to evolve from the, you know, traditional brokerage model where everything did flow directly through the advisor. Now, we have an advisor partner who's engaged in every single one of the employers that come through our site. So that's actually a lead generation service where employers can come to the website, they can learn about it, they can get the evaluation. But during that process, one of the first things that happens is they get matched with one of our advisor partners. And, you know, that's important for a number of reasons, but simply put, you know, ultimately it's going to involve insurance advice and insurance quotes, and you need to have a licensed partner involved there. But I think what you're asking about is less on the sort of compliance side and more on, you know, the competition for attention. And with CloudAdvisors, you know, promoting our message directly to employers, attending conferences, and you know, getting our message directly to HR and finance and leadership, that is putting us in competition for the attention of those employers. Our advisor partners who have our service, they love it, and they encourage us to do more of it because, again, it's helping them ultimately win new business. And advisors who maybe aren't on our platform, I'd encourage you to come and check out what it is we're doing, because what we're doing is really trying to change the expectations of the employer, giving them opportunities where, yes, they can access the marketplace, they can access benchmarking and insights, but they're going to do that through you, just not in a face-to-face meeting necessarily. That first touch point might be online, and you can have your own online branded marketplace that you use to get in front of your clients. But that's a paradigm shift, right? Especially for some who have been in the industry for a long time. But every time we move from one stage to the next, we're entering this age of convenience now, where the employer expectations have changed, and we're going to continue to, again, deliver to that medium and make sure that the employers who want access, they don't want a first meeting, they want to be able to look at a few things themselves and then set up a meeting, that they have the ability to do that. So yeah, that creates some tension, but ultimately I think out of that tension comes some really great outcomes for the employer and ultimately the employees who can access that.
Right. So we're going to wrap up with one final question here, Matt, and this is, you have some thoughts, I think, about the future of the benefits sector in Canada. Can you elaborate for me here? I'm very curious about this.
Yeah, so I guess we started this interview kind of talking about the origin of CloudAdvisors, and that was 10 years ago when I started in the industry, and 7 years ago when we started the company. So what does it look like to be an advisor in 10 years is largely being answered right now. There is a digital marketplace, and there is instant quoting, and there is instant access to insights and benchmarking and analysis, and all of that being served up. So what does it look like to be an advisor over the next 10 years? And what is the future of advising? And that's something I think about all the time, because I feel like our duty, and because we just touched on, yes, it sometimes creates tension, but our duty is to look into the future and look at what the expectations are from the employer and the employees, and how do we deliver that sooner rather than later. So what I think about in terms of the future of advising is, we have this automation of presentation today. We have automated reports, we have automated dashboards, and an advisor can be client ready instantly. What we're moving towards is going to be both optimization and automation of execution. And this is going to pose some really interesting problems technically, where the industry does need to come together on some integrations. But optimization in terms of, when I present you the bar score, it begs a question about how do I improve my plan, which begs a question about an additional benchmark. And the more data I show you, the more you want, and the more sophisticated questions that employers are going to be asking of their advisors, and ultimately of us as the service provider. So how do we produce more answers? How do we prioritize those answers and utilize more data sets to be able to answer really complex or nuanced questions, or personalized questions for particular employer? They want to know not just how their plan stacks up and how they can improve it, but what it would cost. And what's the cost benefit analysis of doing this strategy versus this strategy? Can we model that? These are things that, yeah, we can technically achieve these things, but to do them at scale, to do them in an approachable and actionable way, is going to take some additional work. So optimization and helping to optimize what is the best plan at the best price. How do we use data to answer that question, getting more into the, not just the value of the plan, but also the pricing of the plan, and then automation of execution. Once I've made a decision, that's it. I don't want to be involved in insurance anymore. And we hear this from employers a lot, right? It's like, there's 2 times that insurance is important in your life: the time you purchase it and the time you have to claim. And outside of that, it's like, can you just reduce all that to the background? And I think that's what the next stage is going to be, is that age of execution, allowing the machine-to-machine communication to execute on that. And it's a really exciting time, because a lot of the foundation is coming into maturity right now, and creating a lot more opportunities for not just us, but some of our partners and some of our insurance provider partners as well, that are pushing the envelope internally on what their systems can do. And as I said before, and maybe this is a good place for me to kind of wrap up my answer on this, is this whole industry exists to serve the employer and ultimately the employees and their people. And so I think that the vendors that are going to win, or the the ultimate windfall here is anyone who's focused on achieving the value proposition for employees, right? And how we utilize the technology to create better advice, to create urgency, to make decisions that the employer actually changes their plan, actually improves their plan, adds services, but then translates those services, communicates them to the actual employees and their family members that see value in it. And that's what's tied in with our mission to improve the access to healthcare for all Canadians. And we think that the technology at scale is a way that we can do that. So that's what I see as the future of advising.
Yeah. Alex, anything you want to wrap us up with there?
No, I think, Matt really touched on it, on everything. He's quite the expert in the industry, and we really look to him in all these cases. And I think he's just shared exactly what our vision is for the next kind of 10 years and looking down the line.
Perfect. And we'll have realistic estimates about how long exactly it takes to implement new technologies every time, Matt. What's the deal?
What's that?
Realistic estimates about implementation for new technologies, Matt? You talked about the struggle at the beginning.
Yeah, that's actually something as a tech company, we struggle with from day one. So you don't want to be one of those companies that is over-promising and under-delivering, right? And so we continue to push the envelope, but make sure we hold some stuff in our back pocket until it's ready to make sure that we're going to be able to execute on that and launch that. But our pace has been accelerating, and I don't think it's going to be 10 years, not even close, before we realize what I'm talking about there. So we'll have to maybe do a round 2 of this interview, and I'll update my answer.
Certainly look forward to seeing what comes next. So thanks to both of you for joining us today. I really appreciate the look at as you said before, the nut and bolts, Matt. That's fantastic. And enjoy both of your days. Thanks so kindly.
Wonderful. Thanks for having us, Jason. Great to talk with you.
That wraps this up. API, Matt used a few acronyms in here. API is an application programming interface. This is basically a way that two dissimilar softwares communicate with each other. So APIs are valuable for offerings like Matt's because it lets you bring your program into other environments. The number for today is 4. The number for today is 4. And I hope you'll join me again in 2 weeks. I have actually a financial advisor coming back on. This is going to be Chris Gorey. Chris is a benefits advisor. This will be a CGIB Navigator podcast as well. And Chris is going to talk about his experience going through an audit with FSRA. This is a really good interview. I think there's something here for everybody, whether you're group or individual or even no life insurance license at all, but financial planning. Just really tons of good information from Chris here. All right, thanks very much and enjoy your continued studies. Hi, if you're listening to this episode and you're not already signed up for CE credits, this is a very easy thing to do. Just navigate over to businesscareercollege.com and you're going to sign up here for CE. Just subscribe. Currently, the pricing is $200 a year. We may be introducing monthly pricing at some point, but as of today, we have a cost of $200 a year. And once you're signed up, then you can just go and listen to every episode within your subscriptions. So you'll use once you're logged in, you'll use my subscriptions here, and you'll just go to the latest episode, which you'll scroll down to very near the bottom 4. It doesn't matter which episode, you just scroll down and you find the one. So as of the time I'm recording this, the most recent episode is season 4, episode 27. I can just start it right from here. I can do the quiz here. Once I'm done the quiz, then I can get my continuing education certificate. Very straightforward. So I would just launch the course here and I can watch the episode from here. Now, if you happen to be already listening to it on YouTube or whatever the case is, you can just navigate right into the quiz. You start your quiz and you're just going to go through the whole thing. And then at the end of it, you'll be able to see your certifications. So we're going to bring up designing small group products. We bring this up and we click on wall certificate, and that's going to give me the CE certificate I need. in order to maintain status wherever I happen to need CE credits. So I really do encourage, I know that out of our regular listeners, about 40% of you are listening to the episode for CE credits. That's about 60% who are listening out of general interest or whatever it is. And I really think this is an easy way to get your CE credits, $200 a year, pretty reasonable price. And as you can see from the certificate here, and as you hear me discuss at the beginning of the episode, we have a broad range of approvals for all of our courses. I'd like to thank Joe Tong. Joseph is our editor, both for video and audio content. And Joe does a lot of good work to make sure that these episodes look and sound good, despite my better efforts. I'd like to thank Maria Nguyen. Maria makes sure that the episodes all get approved for CE credits. Veronica Thibert does the quality assurance through that process. And then we have a strong marketing team that makes sure that all of our content gets out there so that people can find us and take advantage of the learning opportunity they might not have known about.